I don't know which is better. Actually, I know which is better. I'd rather not have my family and friends, but have my freedom or my head on my shoulders, and that is Islam. Because I mean, let's not play. My friend Mubarak Bala, he's still imprisoned and serving a 24-year prison sentence for so-called blasphemy. Why didn't I see Suya? I miss Suya. Okay, tried to make Suya. It was awful. Like, don't buy Suya pepper on Amazon. Today we're reviewing With Difficulty Comes Ease, a drama streaming on Prime. This movie is written and directed by Korede Azeez, director of another movie that I've been meaning to review and have still not gotten around to it, which is It Blooms in June. Okay, let's quickly get through the synopsis, which says, Zainab, a recently widowed Muslim woman, endures the suffocating confines of her mother-in-law's home, where she must remain until the end of her mandatory mourning period. Burdened with financial woes and a secret pregnancy, an unlikely friendship becomes her lifeline as she confronts her grief and redefines her aspirations in a struggle to move on. Guys, can I quickly invite you to please like this video, and especially if you are a returning viewer, would you please consider subscribing to my channel if you're not subscribed? Thank you. And also please share this video. Now is a good time, or at the end of this video. Now, seeing this title, it just screamed poverty porn to me, tragedy porn to me, and honestly, I often really hate those. I think a particular reason I might have skipped this, and I'm so glad that I didn't, and I overrode that instinct, and that reason is Uzoamaka Aniunoh, because she doesn't put herself on rubbish movies. Okay, so we'll get to Uzoamaka, but I'm glad that I overrode that instinct, and then of course I did some research and realized that that phrase, with difficulty comes ease, is actually an important concept or a verse in the Quran, and I think it was used very popularly in more recent times during the COVID pandemic. It's just sort of like a saying to offer comfort during trying times. And so I guess just knowing that made me able to appreciate it. Uzoamaka. Now, speaking of Uzoamaka, let's get straight to the cast and performances. I want to get through this review as quickly as possible. I've not been feeling my best. She plays the character of Zainab here, who's the protagonist. Uzoamaka, she's a really competent actor. Like, she always puts up such a strong performance. Even if you've not watched any other of her movies, at least Mami Water, you've watched Mami Water, right? Okay, so Uzoamaka, she's a really good actor, and in this movie she plays very well, depicting this strong character who is going through grief, then finds out that she's pregnant and she's facing a lot of hardships and just living under these terrible conditions with a mother-in-law who doesn't like her. So she depicts the complexity of this character really well. This character is poor and suffering. She does this without appearing pitiable, which is something I really like. So also her depiction of a very reserved person, doesn't talk much, hardly smiles. I don't know if this is who this person has always been, or this is who they've become as a result of the grief that they've suffered and the austere circumstances that we find them when we come into this movie. But she's fantastic. As I've said, she's a very competent actor. Second on this list is Caleb Richard, who plays the character of Ryan. He's okay. He fits this role. His performance is adequate. He's a very popular northern heartthrob, so he's got a lot of fans. People adore him. I don't mind him, is the most I can say for him. In this movie, he's okay. He does well, but the role does not really require anything exceptional from him. So he does as much as required of him. I know I make that comment quite often, but it's true. You can't do more than what is written for you. So he's all right. And then Ummi, Baba-Ahmed, I love this actor. Here, she plays the mother-in-law to Zainab, and she's the one who's just lost her son. That she's a great actress cannot be overstated. However, the issue I have, and seeing her in this movie, the first thing I thought was, I hope she's not the same person again. And it turns out she's the same person again. She plays it exceptionally well. This always irascible, always angry, always malicious character. You know, we've seen her be this in Halita, we've seen her be this in Sons of the Caliphate. The only difference is here she's an impoverished woman, and in most instances where we see her, she's a high society, but it's pretty much the same thing. She's always like this character. I mean, I know when people do things exceptionally well, maybe there's some value in casting them over and over for the same type of role, but she has so much range that I wish that, you know, she got more opportunity to show what she can do. But that said, she's an amazing actor. And then the final person I'm going to mention is that baby that we have only in the final scene. That baby is too cute. Okay, all right, guys, have you seen my painting? I made this painting specifically for this video because I love this movie, and I think that this movie really does deserve fan art, you know, so I hope you like it. I don't know if that looks more like a hijab or ninja outfit, I'm not sure. But I just did it like in the middle of the night. All right, let's move on. What works? This movie does a lot right. So let's get straight to the story because I don't have very much to say about the technical aspects. So the topics and themes that this movie tackles, there's themes around resilience in the face of adversity, religious belief and the attending conflicts and alienation, ostracization that can come with that, grief and the plight of a Nigerian woman of a certain demographic under certain cultural circumstances. And then under this last point, which is a grieving woman in that certain cultural context, this movie demonstrates some of the ways that things can go very wrong, especially when a woman is not adequately protected by her husband in the event of his death. And in this movie, that unravels like very, very quickly, and it's almost like a step-by-step manual for what not to do if you're not going to leave your wife in these kinds of straits if something happened to you suddenly. Here we have first the absence of a marriage certificate, and then that spills over into several other different problems. And then of course we have corruption. This movie showcases, you know, conflicts at different levels. The grief itself is a whole thing, and then there's the pregnancy that she discovers and fear of losing this pregnancy after it's revealed that she's had 5 miscarriages. I cannot imagine what that must feel like, but there are many women that can relate. Then of course there's financial insecurity, there's her living in this hostile environment with a mother-in-law that just does not like her, and then there's loneliness. Even if the movie does not exactly highlight that, just taking it from the context, you can tell, you can intuit that she's extremely lonely. She's grieving her husband, who seems to be like the only person in the world that she had, and so there's so much going on with her. Even when it's not made very, very overt, it's there playing in the undercurrent. And so I think as a result of how subtly all of these are managed and handled, I don't feel overwhelmed by the weight of all of these things because the movie is not heavy-handed. Whew, gosh, sorry guys, asthma has been kicking my ass in the last weeks or so. Like, I can't even begin to describe to you how difficult it's been for me. Often I have to edit my breathing out of my videos because sometimes I have to literally like pause for several seconds just to breathe. It's really hard for me, but let's carry on. The narrative plot of this movie is like really smooth, it's coherent, it's thoughtful, and it's very evocative. The pace works. There's an obvious show of respect, you know, for the cultures that this film is centered around, whether it's religious or traditional cultures. There are a few instances where expectations are subverted and the movie plays with misdirection. So for instance, the sister-in-law turning out to be the bad bitch, because when you read the synopsis and it says unexpected friendship, then you see the sister-in-law and they have a friendly rapport. At least I thought that, oh, this is the friendship that she has within the family, how sweet. And then we know how that turns out. And then Kazim not being shady is also, I guess it was misdirection, because at first when we start seeing all the things that are being revealed, did he send the money, this or that, the money, like you start to wonder like, oh my God, did he live a double life? Was he lying about is this the story? I really for a minute there thought that might be the story, and horror of horrors, maybe he has a second family somewhere, but why would he? He's a Muslim man, he's within his rights, I suppose. So that was good misdirection as well. And then the men standing up for Zainab is a bit of a subversion, because sometimes in situations like this is the male relatives who show up to sort of frustrate the widow and pile on her with, you know, the different dictates dictates of tradition and so on. But in this case, it's the mother-in-law who really is her antagonist, and it's usually the male relative. I don't know if it was the same one who spoke on her behalf several times or different ones. I don't know. And then another subversion, I don't think you can exactly call that subversion. It's more like showing us a different side of the same coin, is showing this, in this case, the intolerance in Christianity, because usually when we speak intolerance, it's more easily or more commonly portrayed with Islam. And so here it's refreshing to see it from the other side as well. My toxic comment here is Muslims persecute and then Christians ostracize. We know many of these stories where if you get out of line, your family will just shut you off and shut you down. And that's the focus of this movie, right? But man, I don't know which is better. Actually, I know which is better. I'd rather not have my family and friends, but have my freedom or my head on my shoulders. And that is Islam. Because, I mean, let's not play. My friend Mubarak Bala, he's still imprisoned and serving a 24-year prison sentence for so-called blasphemy. That's not very likely to happen in Christianity, at least not in Nigeria. I don't know where that would be a thing. So they all have their different issues, but this movie tackles what it feels like, that sort of intolerance on the side of Christianity. So it's nice to see that different side. And for me personally, this movie reminded me again how fortunate I am with my family, and I'll never lose sort of sensitivity to how difficult it must be. I mean, if your family really does believe in the concept of a heaven and a hell and they love you, of course they'll be worried for you, you know, that you'll spend eternity being roasted like suya or something like that. So I can't quarrel with that. You know, I can only say, just could you at least respect my view? And I've been really fortunate. You know what, moving on. Really good character arcs. Okay, maybe really is a stretch, but good enough character acts. And then for good or for bad, these characters feel real. Their motivations are quite obvious and their responses are just very human. This movie has a lot of heart with different aspects, with the love story that starts as a friendship. Well, it never becomes a love story, but we know that that's what's playing out under the surface. And then the healing of the rift between Zainab and her sister, that's played by Michelle Dede. And then eventually her relationship with her mother-in-law. All of these things are very heartening. And then I like, of course, Abuja as a location with Gwagalada. There's quite good production value here, and all of the different aspects of the production come together to create quite an immersive experience. The house looks and feels like a house. The room feels like a room. Different sets and apartments. The hijab is exotic to me because, I mean, I don't even know how it works. So in this movie, it's kind of like a demystifying. Watching her, the way she puts it on, I'm like, oh, okay, that's the difference. You know, sometimes if you ask me, I think it's just something you just wrap, but of course it's not. It's a whole item of clothing, like a single piece. Her sewing machine, and talking about her in that world or potentially that world, and something she explores for a minute there. There's someone making masa off to the side. Just these many little touches. Why didn't I see suya? I miss suya, okay? Tried to make suya, it was awful. Like, don't buy suya pepper on Amazon. Now, while I have a general comment later on the ending of the movie, I think the time jump at the end is necessary for the evolution of the love story. And then what did I say about that baby? That baby is precious. Guys, have you liked this video? Please do if you haven't. And have you subscribed? If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing as we get straight to what does not work. Oh, my leg died. Let me stand up for a second. My legs are dead. Oh my God. I think I might just remain on my feet because I don't want to be here forever. Okay, what does not work? There's some mistakes, you know, some things that are just confusing for me with the plot. One of them is that it seems to me like after the question of what happened to the money in the husband's account is resolved, it comes up again, and then that's a bit confusing for me. So I might have missed a bit there. So if you understand what was going on there, maybe help me understand, because it feels like the question of what happened here or there or whatever came up again after that question had been resolved. And then I also have a question about the Ida. My leg is frozen. My leg died. I don't know how I was sitting. I also have a question about her going back to complete the Ida morning rite, because didn't she complete it before she left? So I was a bit confused about that. However, I think it could be because of the pregnancy, because I think it had been explained earlier that there's varying lengths depending on the situation. Like if she's pregnant and then it has to be for the whole 9 months, I imagine. So maybe, and again, that was also part of the reason why she decided to hide the pregnancy, because she didn't want to stay the entire 9 months. And then when she was found out, she now offers to come complete. But I wasn't completely sure. If you know why it played out that way, maybe you could clarify for me in the comments. There's a bit of an inconsistency to me with the sister-in-law's pregnancy. When the sister-in-law is leaving, she's already fully, obviously pregnant. But then later, when they announce that they want to do the sitting in for the sister-in-law, whatever it is, she's had the baby. Zainab is fully pregnant and almost due. So I'm like, how exactly did sister-in-law's pregnancy freeze or something? Again, these are all things that I'm finding more confusing than anything else, and I could be wrong. So please do help me and clarify in the comments. But let's get to the things that I really am saying don't work. The cinematography, I think it could have been better. As a general note, some of the emotional beats are not very convincing for me. First scene with her sister, that's Zainab's sister, it doesn't work for me. I think it's, first of all, the abruptness of the tears on the phone, and then the call just ends very abruptly, and then when they see each other, I understand, but they're trying to depict that these people don't speak and there's distance between them, but there's something about the scene that just does not work for me. And then this movie does not feel emotionally manipulative, except for this one scene I'm going to mention now, which is towards the end when she's repeating to her mother-in-law, it's his, that's that the baby is his. The first time was very effective. The second time, probably the third time, and then when it keeps going, I understand it in a detached way, but there's just something odd about it that just feels manipulative to me. Like this repetition, I know the role of repetition in writing, but there's something about the delivery that does not work for me in that scene. The end of this movie is a little bit convenient, wouldn't you say? You know, like the money comes in, the money in the account is approved for release, the package is found 9 months later, the mother-in-law just takes her word for it, and everything is just like tied up in a neat little bow. It's a lot of things to just suddenly all resolve themselves all at once. So I just too much convenience for me there. And then something about the character Zainab, as much as I'm very sympathetic throughout the journey, this is a really sympathetic character. There's something though that happens that puts me off this character a little bit. When Ryan breaks down, when he comes back from the brother's wedding that he invited himself to, and he's very vulnerable and broken, she displays no empathy. I understand how hardship can give you sort of like an unrelenting hard edge, but it just turns me off her slightly because this man has done literally everything. So that was difficult for me. And then along with this theme of her hard edge in that scene is just this the way she's very one note, because she's just weighed down by everything and we hardly see her express anything other than despondency. She's just so despondent throughout this movie, even when things work out. I think a very important feature in life is gratitude. Sometimes even when you're surrounded by so much adversity, if you don't have the ability to look around and recognize and be grateful for things that are working out, then it's almost like you don't deserve the good things that work out for you. Because yes, there's so many terrible things happening all around, but yeah, this guy shows up like an angel. A little mercies here and there. There's this pregnancy that every day that the sun rises and it's still here, it's a blessing. I'm sure maybe that one is like she's afraid to hope, but even with things not ever coming to a head exactly, just there's so many little things to be grateful for, but she's just despondent throughout, and that was kind of stressful for me. And then going back to Ryan, I like the character, the way that they show up. It's nice to have a ray of sunlight, but I wish that this ray of sunlight was spread out a bit more with different circumstances, not him just being there sort of like he's unbelievably patient, he's so present, he's so available, and he just seems to fit all her needs, almost like his plot convenience, so I don't know, it was a lot for me. This movie also juggles with too much. It just takes on so many issues. I mean, there are main issues, right? If you want to isolate them, the two main issues here are money and baby. let this baby be safe and come to term, and let me just have some financial security. That's it. But then there are all the layers, and each one is relevant. Each one in itself is crushing. Owing this man 800,000 naira on your husband's behalf is crushing. Losing your workspace is crushing. Afraid to lose your baby is crushing. Having living with your mother-in-law who's hostile is crushing. Having and then if you talk the financial aspect of it, there are also different layers. You bring this document, bring that document, bring this, and so on, every of it. So, and then not having any future like plans as far as even career goals. She doesn't know if she wants to go back to being a fashion designer. One minute she does, next minute she doesn't. She doesn't know if she wants to enter this competition. It's a lot. There's so much going on that at some point a lot of it just fades into irrelevancy. But I'm able to keep in view the most critical things, which is her two problems in this life are baby and money. That's it. So in conclusion, I'm just going to say that this movie is a really good watch. I really like this movie. In spite of everything that I've said, you know, like those are just things that I pick out with a very critical eye, but they don't really take away from my enjoyment of this movie. The pace is slow. The vibe is definitely art house. Yeah, I do really like this movie. I think it could, though, have shaved off some of the run time. I think it could have been shorter. So this is a really good film done with great sensitivity. It features really good performances. The directing is intentional and thoughtful, as most aspects of the filmmaking are. And guys, I am proud to recommend this movie. That's it for With Difficulty Comes Ease. Don't leave without liking and subscribing. There's going to be a shorter version to this review linked below, so please check that out. That's easier to share. And what do I say to you guys? You have the right to an incredible viewing experience, so never settle. My legs are back alive again.